I'm sure everyone's already thought of everything I was about to say here in the beginning, so we'll pretend. Well, I just pretend, as I've done before, I'll say, I want to be sure and touch on certain other slightly different views of some of the things we were talking about last time, having to do, as you recall. You do recall. It had to do with, we were pointing out that the ordinary intellect is in a continual search in the secondary sense for gods that man can please. And also, how it is the real revolutionist has no established gods or goals or ideas to support, to please, or to follow. And also right at the tail end last time we was talking, to point out that ordinarily all new managerial direction, all new real direction in a business normally comes from upstairs. And how it is that from the ordinary yellow circuit upper stories inside the human nervous system, a real revolutionist has no usable directions. That what it is that he is seeking, the information that is, something new direction for the intellect, no matter how else you put it, you've got to realize this, it is going to come from sources outside the normal business arteries. So you're left, even there in the confines of your own wonderful chrome, glass, modern building, that at the furthest reaches, upstairs as far as your own management is concerned, there's not going to be information coming down. There's not going to be directions coming down that will send you where you're trying to go. So on that sad note, I thought we'd stop for the week. There's been far too much, as I said, I received word, there's been far too much laughter from certain views and certain frivolities about this, and so we'll leave on that note. Okay. Then look at it this way. A real revolutionist in some way has got to be able to feed himself new food. He has got to be able to recycle, to be able to renew himself, or to do something that I find verbally even more interesting, descriptive-wise, an absolute 3D impossibility that is even beyond a self-fueling system, which although this and man seems to be, but what it amounts to, you got to piggyback yourself. I mean, it's impossible enough in a closed system to refuel yourself. But of course you can't get hung up on that, because then you can look around at life from any ordinary view and say, well, I can't even get past that because life keeps going. And of course, astrophysics and other sciences have such theories as the Big Bang, and we're all still running off the inertia of whatever cranked this up. But still, you're left with an interesting local phenomenon that conflicts with what seems to be a universal model for the best that the human nervous system can do right now in the city. And that is that, since no new energy is coming and none's going, how does this thing stay alive? Of course, that is pretty philosophical in the connotative street sense of the word. But at a local level, how is it that someone actually learns something? You can say, well, I go and I learn from somebody. I pay somebody to teach me. I pay somebody to teach me mathematics. I pay someone to teach me how to speak Italian. They know it, and they convey it to me. And then you can say, well, how did they know it? Well, they studied it in school. And you can say, well, where did they get it? That's one line that the ordinary intellect finds to be, it normally doesn't go as far as to find it extremely frustrating. In some way, the human nervous system recognizes the potential for a short circuit for wires to fall into a damp spot on the cabinet. And so if you start asking an ordinary intellect, wait a minute, where does new information come from? Any kind of information, just to you, speaking locally. Where do you get new information? If you want the new information, I want to know how to speak Italiano. Well, I go find someone. Well, how did they know it? Well, they found someone. Where'd they get it? The ordinary intellect immediately recognizes that I ain't going to play with this crap. It's a useless matter. But it is no conclusive end for that kind of energy flow that starts as a question. But it would seem to be in some sort of dire conflict with the universal idea that, all right, somebody had to be the first person to speak Italian. Somebody somewhere had to be the first person to go, by God, I'm sick of German or Greek. Just fully on it. I'm going to speak. Let's see, I'm Italian. I'll call it Italian. I'm just going to speak Italian. You know, I mean, who knows? Somebody might get interested. I might turn a buck. You know, the ordinary intellect can't go anywhere with that. He might as well be talking about where did the universe come from, except most people wouldn't even see the correlation between those two questions. But back to not just ordinary people. I'll leave that with you if you need a hobby. But someone attempting to learn something extraordinary, since there's no new information, even at the ordinary level, which is what I was hinting, trying to get you to look at on your own, but then at some out of the ordinary level. In other words, it could be proven, if you want it this way. This is not a lesson in logic. But it could be proven that you could not learn a new language. It could be proven you couldn't learn anything new. See, because if it could be learned new, you'd already know it. Or I could start this line about, well, you can't learn something new. You can't learn Italian because nobody knows Italian that doesn't already know it. That you can't ever learn it unless you already know it. It's worse than that, though. If we're talking about something like we're calling the revolution, there's not even any normal source for it. Did anybody follow that? That you can't learn, it could be proven symbolically, logically, in a certain way, that you can't learn anything in the ordinary sense new. So if that's true, how about something out of the ordinary? How would you ever learn it? Well, what's impossible squared? And yet, in some way, to be or whatever a real revolutionist would be, you've got to find some way to feed yourself. You've got to find some way to, in a sense, renew yourself. Or you got to piggyback yourself. In some way, you got to carry yourself, and there's nowhere in you to stand. It would appear from all ordinary views. But look at it another way. Try it this way. That this kind of self-renewal, this kind of feeding of new food, start out with a kind of inquiry, like you're looking at a map. And ask yourself, is it a matter that to pursue this kind of stuff, that you have got to feed yourself new food that you don't have? You can start with that. Surely you see that'd be like, I'm going to teach myself Italian, and I do not know anything about the Italian language. I'm talking about nothing. And you got no books. So at the ordinary level, you could say, well, that is, to be charitable, that is ridiculous. But in even a more complex, ridiculous sense, to this kind of stuff, you've got to feed yourself new food that you don't have, new information that you don't have. You can try it that way. You could say to do this, you've got to feed yourself new food that you do not recognize. It's only been 10 minutes, and finally we seem to be getting somewhere. Well, we're at least 10 minutes into an hour. Or, how about one more? Attempting to feed yourself new food that you did not realize that you had access to. All three of those, I submit to you, would fly if you could see a 5D vehicle flying in 3D space. Because still at the ordinary level, at any sequential logical level, all of this is ridiculous. But in some way you got to feed yourself new information, new food that you don't have. And it's not coming from any ordinary source. There is nobody to teach this anywhere. You cannot go and learn Italian if you don't know Italian. You got to teach yourself Italian. Keep this symbolic or metaphoric. Somebody write me and decide which it is. But don't send it to me personally. Send it to me as a simile. See, because I was lying, I know the difference, but it was just try to give the feel like the peanut gallery is still in business, and everybody, it's not just Buffalo Bob, it's to get the kids to participate. Let's all sing along. All right. That in some way you got to teach yourself Italian, the new language, the new food, and you don't know Italian. No conditions, no comma, you just don't know Italian. That is what I meant, at least metaphorically, by saying you've got to feed yourself new food that you don't have. There's no comma there. It's not, well, I don't have it, but I'll go get it. That's like wanting to put a comma after I'm going to teach myself Italian and I don't know Italian, comma, dash, but I'll go find someone who does and I'll learn it. You got to put a period there to try and see what this is hinting at. Or look at the other way, the second way I gave you. You've got to feed yourself new food that you do not currently recognize. And the third one I gave is a variation of that, but it's distinct enough that you have got to feed yourself new food that you do not realize presently that you have access to. Well, let's pretend that we're making a slight indentation in our tongues and our receptive ears, and pretend it's a sort of a new paragraph, and put it this way, that a revolutionist is not a real revolutionist unless he can order himself about. That's the stripped down, nude version again. So for those of you who like to take more extensive notes, here's the long version. That was the 45 version. Here's the 33 1/3. A revolutionist is not a real revolutionist unless he can direct, unless he can order himself about into areas and activities that would be of no apparent immediate primary consequence. That's the full version. In fact, the short version is a revolutionist is not a real revolutionist unless he can order himself about. This has no commas, no clauses, no parenthetical inserts, no way out. You're simply not involved with this. You're simply not feeding yourself new food unless you can do one thing. If you need any sort of benchmark for the night, unless you can order yourself about. Now, if you understand that, that's close enough. The fuller version is unless you can order yourself about into activities, into areas, and of course I don't mean out here because anybody can get on a bus and go to Indianapolis. Well, of course anybody can if there's one running. The areas are up here. But it would be that you can order yourself about, you can direct yourself about, you can play the managerial part, send down new directions and order yourself into areas and activities that are of no apparent secondary significance whatsoever. If you can't do that, I can say you're not doing this, but of course, to be really dirty, I can say that you can't do anything. You can't do anything any more, any less than anybody else can do. You can't do any more, you can't do any less than you could do before you ever thought you were involved with something. You can't do any more or any less than Billy Graham and Charles Manson and Ronald Reagan and all those other wonderful, wonderful people. Jekyll and Suzanne. I hate to start on these heroic figures because they just, well, you know as well as I do, history is so, I think there's some talk that they want to stop accordion from being used as a synonym for replete, but so I guess we moved up close enough to Steinbeck to just stop it here. But anyway, you get the gist of it. Unless you can order yourself about, back to the nude version, but you've got to understand no condition. You can't say, well, I can order myself about here and there. And one time I got overweight and the doctor said, boy, you need to lose weight or you'll die. And I lost weight. That's not ordering yourself about. Only a real revolutionist actually knows. I can talk about it a while longer, but only somebody involved with this, somebody that can get away from the original building site of their own neural system, their own thinking, that you understand that you can order yourself about, that you can turn to you, in a sense, say, do so-and-so, sucker, for no reason. No doctor told you to, nobody told you to. Of course, if you're really good in understanding this, in a sense, you didn't tell you to. That is, all of my chi-roots, surely some of you suspect by now, surely, that all the ideas of the old man, the kid, a partner, a brother-in-law, looking at oneself in the mirror, none of that has to do with anything out there. Somebody suspects that, doesn't they? And so in a sense, you've got to be to the point that you don't turn to you and go, all right, you, lose weight. Not if you did on the basis that you looked up in the mirror and you went, oh my God. Or that you just looked at your pants, popped out, and the zipper won't close. Whatever it is. That's not ordering yourself about. Ordering yourself about is to actually turn. And you go do something for no apparent reason. That doesn't even cover it. Don't write that down. It's not that you do it for no apparent reason, and it's not that you do it for a reason. It's neither of the two. They're not anti-reason. There is no word. I was going to someday maybe work on that. It's more like non-reason, but it's not anti-reason. It's neither one of the two. It's not. Now you could use that. Somebody might go lose weight, just for instance, but it wouldn't be because that they said, I need to lose weight, or that anybody said, but even themselves, that they silently went, I ought to drop a few pounds. It's not that, but understand, it's not anti-that. In other words, it's not that. That's not ordering yourself about. That's why it's strange, and I said that some of you, I'm sure, know, even though I'm sure it's or probably a surprise to hear me put it in words, but some of you, many of you already know what I'm talking about in action. That is the only movement, that is the only kind of direction that can be classified. Are you in charge of such? I guess so. It could be classified verbally right now as being revolutionary action, as you be able to order yourself about for no apparent secondary reason. One more time, back to the nude version, the strip version. To be able to order yourself about. Can you consider it a little further than I was already hinting? If you took it that simply to yourself, no conditions whatsoever, not order myself about, parentheses, comma, or anything, order yourself about. And there's no self-reference involved with it. Order myself about for a damn good reason. Or to order myself about just to see if I could do it. That's no good. Just order myself about just because I don't like to take orders. So it's a real, it will test my spiritual, moral mettle for me to say, all right, go do so-and-so when I don't want to. None of that will do. Because all of that's going to be based on some secondary city consideration, no matter what you say. You have got to be able to order yourself about for no known reason. I don't mean known to me. I don't mean known to anybody. When you can do it good, it's not even known to you. That's how you know that you're ordering yourself about. Because if it's for some known reason to you, it doesn't matter. Don't say whether it's reasonable or right. If the reason is known to you, it's going to strike you as being, oh, like, yeah, I should, or else I ain't going to do that. For no known reason is to tell yourself to do something and you really got no response to it. You don't go, wow, I've been hoping I'd tell myself to do that. Or go, oh, damn, I was afraid I was going to someday tell myself, listen, you're going to have to quit smoking to ever become like Buddha. To order yourself about is say, all right, you do so-and-so, and you got no response to it. No ordinary response. There is no secondary approval. There is no secondary resistance. I guess ordinary people say it just for no apparent reason. Then you're getting close to revolutionist action. Then you're getting close to leaving the old building site. But as long as you got any feeling about it, as long as you say, well, look, we got to move from here. We're playing in the same old stadium forever, and sometimes I think I'm getting smarter, and sometimes I cheer, and sometimes my own neural system makes a big wave, and I think, hooray for me, and then sometimes I think, phooey, boy, am I terrible. I should trade me to another team. As long as you got any feeling about that, you can't leave that stadium. Oh, you can talk about it, and you can believe, well, yes, I walked down, I left the stadium every now and then, especially I have a few drinks or smoke some of those cigarettes, or I can just sit around and I can imagine I walk to a new place, and I imagine, I'm going to go down here and build me a new stadium. Duck flop. You're not. You can even say, well, I'm determined to. I'm going to tell myself to do it. That is not ordering yourself about because you have got some feeling about what you're doing, some ordinary feeling. To find a new neural building spot to carry this parallel any further would have to be that you could some way find that you could move here away from what you're doing and go there and say, all right, build your little stadium right here. And as far as still obscenely putting this into words, your feeling would be, and not even that, I don't mean sarcastic, you just got no feeling about it. Like, well, why not? But you got no feeling like, boy, I was hoping that the great gods would lead me to Canaan, the new building spot. Or else you might say, boy, I was hoping the gods would lead me to the promised land, and Jesus, they want me to build in Indianapolis. You got no feeling. That is ordering yourself around. That is revolutionist action. I suggest. Because suggestions don't cost anything. Since I sort of put it into the description, let me get one more fuller version, or one more version of the fuller version of what I just said. But to say, you're not a revolutionist, you're not a real revolutionist unless you can direct and order yourself about into new areas and activities that seem to be of no immediate secondary consequence, oftentimes in silence. I already said that discussing, but consider that version 2.5, going from the stripped down nude one being number 1, and number 2 being that one without the final in silence, and then in silence being 2.5. Has everybody got that? Instead of being so correct and playing with decimals, put it to you one more way. You could say it's someone attempting to do this. A real revolutionist is attempting to feed a hunger that seems to be an unnecessary hunger to start with. Does that about cover it? Yes? Yes, it does. Not to feed a hunger by some means or by some new food that seems to be unnecessary. That'd be too easy. That'd be like ordinary people might think. That's like ordinary people hearing ideas, let us say, of secret collusions or secret groups or cults or information in the world, and they think, I read a book by some of this group over here, or I saw their leader one time, and the man had stains on his underarm. So, in other words, you're attacking the information. But the ordinary level, they can't even get closer to the point, which I just given to you, and obviously not enough of you saw it. It's not that the information's bad. That's not even the point. You're not even getting anywhere. You understand? It's just the hunger. All right, I'll do it again. Remember, I thought this was going to be a simpler version. Like a more it was intended to be a more colloquial version. Like how's your mama and them? This new food, this ordering oneself about for no reason, or remember the nude version, being able to order yourself around. It's like attempting to feed a hunger that's of no consequence, apparently. That's of no necessity. You understand? This is pointing at a different place. It's pointing to the hunger, not the food. Everybody else in the city says they're hungry for information. They might call it something else. They're hungry for more wealth, for a better position. And then they're all involved, like you're supposed to be, with wrestling, debating, arguing, fighting, trading, bartering in what seems to be the payoff. That is, I want the food, or whatever it is. But nobody ever gets to the first part, spatially speaking. It's the hunger itself that you need to see. When you can see that the hunger itself is of no consequence, then you're closer to being able to order yourself around. But if you think the payoff, that is, that the food is of importance, you try to order yourself around. That is, the nervous system trying some way to deal with itself on a non-sequential, on a non-level basis, that is coming from somewhere else. You try to order yourself around in yourself, and this is, of course, true with people externally. You try to order yourself around to say, all right, do so-and-so because of this. And that's where the ordinary intellect always looks, is at the end, the payoff. And then it will argue and debate over that. That's not ordering yourself around, because then you go, well, you either like it or you don't like it, or you'll question it, or you'll say, how do I know I'm going to like the payoff? To order yourself around, you don't ever get to that point. There is no payoff. The fun is, well, I already started the sentence. I started to say the fun is in just doing it. But just consider that was just a throwaway line. My tongue slipped. You got to be able to feed a hunger. Now forget the food. See, everybody's got it. Feed the hunger. I got that. I've always wanted to know some kind of secret information. And if you know people from UFOs or other planets and brought secret information, I want it. I want it. In other words, I got the hunger. On the information, on the food, it's the hunger itself. That a revolutionist is not a real revolutionist unless he can attempt to feed a hunger that he recognizes the hunger now, not the food, not the payoff. That to feed a hunger that he recognizes is unnecessary. Don't you see? Because if the hunger is unnecessary, then whatever apparent payoff you get is, it's less than unnecessary. It's just impertinent. It doesn't matter. Ultimately, all thought, ultimately, all information is fungible. It's what it amounts to. Of course, if anybody followed that, I was going to say, so, then you could ask yourself the great musical question, back when they did such things. Is so, why would anybody work when they don't have to? You can ask yourself that, of course, at the ordinary city level, and you can ask yourself if you can float above the city level. In some way, if you can make your own neural system operate like a hovercraft. You say, so why work? Or you can put it a little bit further. How about son of so? So being so, why would anyone work when they didn't have to? Why would anybody order themselves around, which once you get a glimpse of what we're talking about here, you understand that ordinary people don't order themselves around. So I was trying to give you an expansion of that. That was the soul. Why would anybody work that doesn't have to? All right. Son of soul. Isn't that it? Return of soul. Try it in this way, that while life, as we already mentioned, is generally requiring orderly, regulated growth via men bowing to established gods, trying to please established gods that have known lineages. The revolutionist is out just pressing on, bowing to nobody, ordering himself about here and there for no apparent reason. That is an expansion, or it's a contraction, according to how your brain is listening. Or according to which end of the megaphone. Sometimes it's hard to tell whether you're looking down the big end of the barrel or the small end, isn't it? Sometimes you think you're just heading in the tunnel, and maybe you see me or somebody that's coming. And other times you think, I am the tunnel. Not me, you. All right. The tunnel had to do with information. It didn't have anything to do with actually boring through mountains. Well, how about an expansion within the expansion? That while you do recall, just recently we were talking about how the gods that the ordinary intellect in the secondary world of man is out to please gods, but the gods have to be established. I say have to be, they are. But they're established. They're gods, they're recognized institutionally, they're recognized by your group, whoever it is, your country, your race, your nation, your little city. You got some peers there that with you, and you recognize it. You recognize it. They're gods, whether you like them or not, but you're still driven to please them. Even if you're driven to be an anti-follower, if you're driven to be an atheist under those conditions, you're still pleasing gods. While that's going on in life, that is tied to orderly, regulated growth, of which this kind of activity is not, may we probably guess, an integral part. It is not a central part of that kind of regulated growth. And so while ordinary intelligence, ordinary men, but we're talking about the nervous system and the way it's reacting to certain regulated, stable energies, as you have men submitting to the apparent direction of other men. We're talking about back to the city secondary level, that you have apparently taking the direction of other men, of other ideas, of other institutions, and other gods. But it's always a matter of other. That's why everybody loves to quote, why everybody wants to read, why everybody wants to go to a lecture, why everybody, any sane person, if they're going to learn Italian, where they're going to go? Another person. You got to. Or if you're in a school, if you're in a Spanish school and you want to learn to speak Italian, you've got to go to another institution. You're not going to sit there at a Spanish school forever and hold your breath and throw your partridge on the floor. All right, porridge. Sometimes you people get serious and don't appreciate a joke, and then sometimes you get real silly and you don't appreciate seriousness. You can hold your breath forever there in the midst of that institution. Or you're a Catholic and you decide you want to be Jewish. You can sit there and go hold your breath in masses and just attend massive amounts of masses. And you'll never get any instruction in another religion. You got to go to another institution. So the orderly, stable, regulated growth that takes place in the city over a long range, just the ordinary evolution of humanity, is on the basis that the direction always seems to come from other. So it's from another man, another group of men, another institution, another set of ideas. And the revolutionist receives no such instruction. He just presses on. Just presses on, ordering himself about. I just heard from the Amen Corner, heard someone just muttered, for those that couldn't pick it up, said, "Boy, what a relief to hear that." As the Marines say, we serve where we can. Well, it's either that or the Marriott catering that they do with airlines. How about a contemporary example? It's very old, but it's just popped up again in the last few days. Here we are talking about in August of the great year 1990 that we all love and cherish. But it's an old story, but it just came up. See if you see a connection. We'll flag this as sort of an aside. Having to do with contemporary news going on. There's a religion that forbids the followers of a certain aspect of this major religion, that forbids its followers to shave. And it also forbids them to cover their beards in any way. And this group right now says they admit that they're faced with the possibility of gas warfare. Everybody, you get the picture. Very pious, we're talking about secondary, serious, religious people. And they seem to be in a quandary. You would think. It's nothing new, it's been going, but ask yourself, ponder. What can you make of that? Educated people. I'm not talking about barbarians, but they believe that the gods have directed, never shave. And they go, all right. And then, however, it worked out. Plus, not only that, but you cannot in any way cover your beard, so they cannot put on gas masks. In their face right now, somebody's threatening to come gas them with poisonous gas, and they cannot put on gas masks to save their lives. Now, if you were looking at this from an ordinary city view, you could be sarcastic. You could be all sort. You could be impressed. You could say, "My God, I wish I had that kind of spiritual fortitude that I'd be prepared to die for my beliefs." Or you could be wired up in the city and go, "Jesus Christ," figuratively speaking, what kind of dumbass stuff is this? That somebody going to die? You got to get past all that, because that's not ordering yourself around. That's no kind of new information. I ask you to consider, what can you make of this? Now, some of you are going to find this probably a cause to giggle, and I think I'll just leave it at that. But I brought it up for a reason, not for a laugh. Could you consider that it's almost as though life has these little examples continually going on. It's nothing new, and it's not limited to one religion or one historical era, but it's almost as though life keeps these little examples going that wants to see how far the secondary activities have taken control over the primary ones. In other words, within local conditions, if these group of people believe that the guides in some way, that superior outside forces, directions, have told them, and of course it didn't say die. It didn't say, all right, you're going to have to die. It gets complicated. It says, don't shave. The guys don't want you to shave. And so it goes on, let's say, hundreds of years, these guys don't shave. And the women, if they were Italian. No, don't write me. No. It was a joke. I meant speak Italian. So the great forces say, don't shave. That's what they believe. So it's like life told this group of people, don't shave. Didn't say anything else. Just says, we don't, life imitated God, Jehovah, or whoever went, don't shave. And so this group, he said just a few of them over here in this one spot, this one city, and so they didn't shave. And he let go on for a while. And then he says, oh, by the way, not only don't shave, the beard, and he gives them some story that this represents your, having a beard is your sign of pleasing me. The beard is your emblem of your connection with me. So don't do anything. Don't wrap a do-rag around your beard. When it rains, don't get some kind of little beard umbrella. The beard, that's going to be the sacred connection. So he tells them that, and then he goes, and he lets that go on several hundred years. And so, everything seems all right. Some people, he's told other people they got to shave their head and put funny marks on their forehead. And he tells other men, wear a dress. He's done worse than tell them not to shave. He's told men, wear a dress and don't fool with women. Which I always found to be, just my opinion, somewhat overkill. If you're going to wear a dress, how much success can you expect to go out and have with women to start with? So, I'm not sure he had to tell those kind of people he put in dresses that they had to stay away from women. But at any rate, follow this. I told you this wasn't for a laugh, as you know, but follow. So he does all this, and it seems to be going along. It's no big deal. The people don't shave. They don't. And then he arranges things to these people next door. He says, they threaten this group, tell them that you got some gases, and that you don't like the way they're acting, and you're going to come over and gas them. And so he tells this group to do that, and he tells them, he changes his voice, and he plays like he's another god. He holds his nose. He tells them, threaten to gas these people. And so then he look. So then it's as though he stops and looks to see that this group, they realize, wait a minute. And of course, along the way, he had them develop gas masks, or everybody knows what a gas mask. But then he looks at the first group and he lets them go, dun 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 dun, and they realize, well, we got gas masks, we can buy them down at the Army and Navy store, But wait a minute, and it suddenly strikes them, I cannot put a gas mask on over my beard. In other words, if these people over here that he went, tell me you're going to gas, if they actually do this, if I'm going to continue to please the gods, I'm faced with, and suddenly it strikes them, I'm going to die to please the gods. And of course, some of them may or may not. Consider, though, what in the hell's going on? Get past the two ordinary city views that you might have, that the ordinary nervous system would respond to either say, well, I highly approve of that. I wish I had that kind of spiritual dedication, or to say, Jesus Christ again. What a bunch of, stupid. Who's going to die over their beard? Consider, there's got to be more going on than this. If you're a revolutionist, you know that. I'm not trying to convert the converted to say there's something got to be going on. You know there's more to it than that. But I was trying to kind of punch a hole in the curtain. It sounds funny. It's when I said it's almost as though life keeps these little spotty examples around here and there just to see. Now, don't jump in with ordinary luck and say, to see how dumb people are. If you understood that, yeah. But it's not how dumb they are in that sense. I put it to you already better, and that's why I backed up, though, to make sure that maybe we spread it out enough. It's as though he checks life, that is, to see how far the secondary, in some groups over here and there, how far the secondary movement of life has taken over, has encroached on. It's like the lips begin to eat up the head. Or, well, perhaps a little more poetic, the man begins to overtake the child. That the childish things get consumed by becoming older. It's like to see how far the secondary is taking precedence over the primary. That is, how far will these people go over here for a secondary activity? That is, believing that they're pleasing the gods by not covering their beard, by not shaving and not covering their beard. Are they going to, is it taken over to the point that it is now eating up the primary, which would be not to die at any cost? That's the primary. And just speaking about primary, it doesn't matter what religion you are, what race you are, what sex you are. At the primary level, you're threatened with death, whether it be from gas or just whether it be from Italian cooking. You're confronted with death. It's no idea that of any kind of political, religious, racial, sexual, family cause. It's like, look after number one. Just silently ordering yourself to look out for you. That would be the primary. If that was any longer of any usable consequence, but we can still describe it, that would be the primary. But it's not a see. It's almost as though life wants to see under certain conditions. Will these people actually, to use my example, although I didn't make it up, was this group of people, will they stand there and die? Will they sit there or stand there or lay down and die? I know they're about to die. Here comes the gas. They got warning. Here comes the gas mask laying there, and they won't put them on because they think that I told, well, maybe he did tell them, according to them, is don't shave your beard and don't cover it. And they're going to sit there and see the gas, here it comes, and there's a gas mask and not put it on. Will they do that? Am I growing in a certain way? Is the primary being correctly, gradually, here and there, but is it being, in a sense, absorbed? Three-dimensional, this is, the only way to describe it is much more complex than this. But is the primary, is the instinct, the primary instinct to live at all costs in certain areas, is it being taken over? Is it being caught up by secondary interests such as, well, I think it's most important that I please the gods, and if it takes my life, so be it. It's like life wants to see. There's more to the example. I didn't bring it up just for any reason that has to do with laughter, of course. A rim shot. But I was going to, well, let me leave the example by pointing out, sort of related to what we were already talking about in a different paragraph. That being the case, that possibility of life checking to see how far the secondary is taking over, is taking precedence, is taking control. It's all gradual, and it's not limited to three dimensions. It's not this simple, but it can be described this way. That's why I'm suggesting, it was just a great example right here in our last few days. It's happening again. Of the secondary taking over precedence, over primary activities, primary drives, primary gods. That now it's secondary gods that people will apparently be prepared to die rather than shave off or cover their beard with a gas mask. And of course I know that the 3D level say, no, it's not that. It's that if I did cover the beard, that's not it. It's that covering the beard would displease the gods I'm trying to please. I know that. But see how far it would go, and I was going to end this aside by pointing out again that the revolutionist doesn't even have such luxuries. I know a lot of you thought you missed it, but to hell with it. I'm going on. He doesn't have such luxuries as that. That being what I've just been talking about. Those I'm talking about ordinary, contemporary examples to use as our springboard to jump in this swimming pool that doesn't exist and to swim laps that you can't count. There is apparently pretty widespread, or I wouldn't even hear about it, contemporary city psychological, sociological ideas having to do with persuasion, advertising, propaganda, public campaigns of all sorts, that, and I'm saying city psychology and sociology, and of course holding my hand up, but using that as just a city representation of prevailing ordinary thought down at the ordinary city level of pretty advanced academic, professional thought. Their theories, their models have having to do with how people get persuaded. They seem to now have broken down into three general areas. That using fright, such as campaigns you see in billboards and TV of showing horrendous wrecks and little children and babies killed in car crashes, and then saying, you know, don't drive drunk. And then they seem to enjoy classifying another one into what seems to be a personal touch. It seems to hold out the hope of the promise of some sort of help, which is what most religions' propaganda has to do with, and advertising, and the whole proselytization of religions. It always makes me froth. I don't know whether it's the idea or having all those Z's and Y's together and little vowels in the middle. But it's like the holdout of some sort of promise, a personal touch, of priest, you know, blessing people, either physically touching them or just a promise that, you know, follow this teaching, follow these ideas, and you will be blessed. There is help available. The great forces, the gods will help you if you please them. And then there is a kind of third one that they find persuasion. Just I'm starting off now using ordinary city observations. It's the kind of persuasion of people falling under, I guess, what's commonly referred to or used to be as peer pressure. But it's being affected by groups already acting in a certain way. That instead of it having to be fear and threats, like showing you pictures over and over and over of people in crashes and families being killed because of drunk drivers, would be that if life wanted things changed in a certain way, or some local city, the society seemed to really want to change, that if they'd all been drunks, if it was Sodom and Gomorrah, and just within a few months it suddenly turned into Boston, or it turned into Oklahoma a few years, it turned into a whole dry place. It suddenly all of your neighbors and everybody, they don't know why, but suddenly everybody began, they might have some reason they said, but suddenly everybody you know quits drinking. And they don't even need campaigns. It's like the whole city quit drinking. Maybe you and a couple other, you know, dunderheads, but very soon, assuming you're just ordinary middle of the road, middle of the bell curve, bourgeoisie, surprise, surprise, you would have been persuaded to quit drinking. That you would just go along with whatever the group is doing. An interesting aspect of the way I heard them presenting this most late is a little bit further that they pushed on with the idea of persuasion, that they claim, that is psychology and sociology or whoever it was, that they have statistical, clinical evidence showing that regarding persuasion, using any of those three modes, but regarding persuasion, that people will act according to whatever the persuasion was, while then and later denying that they believed in it, that their actions in any way reflected what they thought. It's awfully, I'm of course doing all this rhetorically now, playing out my little role with the rest of this. I was going to say it's awfully tempting for me to say that horizontal intelligence, citywide intelligence, are getting close to them right then, but getting close, devilishly close, to them simply saying that man's actions may have little resemblance to what he thinks. That they are awfully close to saying, they are in a sense already saying this, psychology is. They don't know it, and I don't mean they're hiding, but they are awfully close to saying that man's acts determine themselves. regardless of what a man thinks. Because that is what they're saying. That people, for instance, this has been known thousands of years. It comes out in literature oftentimes, or poetry, common observation. But people will, let us say, will become part of some violent mob action and join right in and do something, go kill somebody, go attack a neighbor and burn his barn down. And later, a person, a reasonable, ordinary person, in no way out of the ordinary, will just vehemently deny that they believe in such stuff. When they did it, they'll admit that they were a part of it, and even if they don't try to rationalize all that, they will simply, if you ask, do you approve of that? No, I do not. And you already, they know that you know that they were a part of it. And under all sorts of conditions, ordinary people will continually deny under certain conditions. I don't mean there have to be some kind of peculiar conditions, but people will continually deny that they believe in, that they support, that they think approvingly of something that they did. And in some way they were, as psychology puts it, persuaded to do it. I was going to ask you, after bringing all this up, whether you might find that this could have any possible connection to the mapping that we have done in the past of pointing out that man can act and man can think of acting. And he is the only three-dimensional creature that can do so. And yet here you have, and I'm saying psychology and sociology, I'm not in trying to some way to single them out, at least any of you think that I was picking them out as being some sort of academic target, that they're wrong. That's simply a sort of intellectual cutting edge of what the city is thinking, what ordinary intelligence is now thinking. That people can be persuaded to do things. Sometimes, of course, this is again from the city view, there's good persuasion and bad persuasion. There could be good persuasion to try and encourage people not to drive while drinking. And then you could say, yeah, but then there could be some kind of bad persuasion, like the neighborhood gossip starts about so-and-so is some kind of alien. So-and-so bought a barn down here and he's not part of our group. Let's go burn his barn down and kill him. And you can say, well, that's bad. I mean, if you're going to call that advertising, then that's bad advertising. In other words, there could be good persuasion and bad persuasion. No. Get to the idea of persuasion itself. That apparently people can be led to do things, ordinary people in the city, in a variety of ways. But the three main ones, if we'd had more time, but some of you, I brought out the three ones that they picked out for a reason. I even related it to you. But then it turns out that no matter what people do, city intelligence is more and more coming to the conclusion, as represented by psychology and etc., that they're just confronted with the fact that people's behavior may have nothing to do with what they say they think. We're talking about reasonable people now, not somebody trying to weasel out. Not that this mob went and burned down this guy's barn and killed him and his family, and later you say, why'd you do that? I'm not saying people go, the devil made me do it, or I was drunk, or I was afraid they'd kill me. You could observe that a whole group of people seemed to have gotten involved with some mob action, some group action, and yet every one of them will sit there and as sane as anybody can be, say, I do not approve of that. That is not the way I think. That is not what I believe in, and yet I did it. Of course, the last part I threw in. They're not going to necessarily say that. And so you're faced with just an increasing, that's represented by the world of academia and the soft sciences. You're confronted with more and more of ordinary city intelligence beginning to be eaten up by this secondary world perception, once it's pointed out, that people can think one thing and do something that has no relationship to it. And I don't mean just momentarily. That psychology says they more and more are coming to the conclusion that a man's thoughts and the way he actually acts through whatever is persuading him to do so may bear little resemblance. They may seldom correlate. Of course, there's one side step that they already been on at the ordinary level, and that is them saying that is the basis of neuroses. That is the progenitor of all psychoses. That is the stress. That is the dichotomous, unnatural life of the modern world. Which, of course, there was somebody saying that 5,000 years ago. There was somebody saying that. That is, some part of life's body was saying that when it first began to make man's intellect talk, and that is the secondary world started. Somebody immediately said that. As soon as somebody talked, As soon as they did, there was a second person who went, oh, Jesus, we should have never started this shit. Of course, that may not have literally happened, but there was a part of life's own nervous system that as soon as it said a word, another part of its nervous system went, oh, boy. And it's like the first time we split the atom. Oh, boy, I knew it was going to be trouble. Me suggesting that it's almost to the point that city intelligence, especially psychology, is almost to the point of saying that man's acts, his behavior itself controls what he does. That behavior controls behavior regardless of what people think. They're surrounded by statistical data, clinical testing, interviews that make them say that. They're at the point of saying that. And I was going to ask if they do say that, which they may or may not. When it gets as close to something, in a sense, drastically happening in the 3D world, I'm not here to predict because it can just go another way. That is, they can forget what's going on and begin to talk about it in a different manner. It's not uncommon. But they're this close to saying that. That is, ordinary intelligence is very close to saying, hey, what people think, as far as we can tell, may seldom have any distinct connection to what people do. If they said that, if it goes in that direction, I was going to ask you this musical and rhetorical ending question. Do you think that would portend the end of man? That it's not just a description of neuroses, that is, that a man thinks a certain way, an individual man thinks, swears he thinks a certain way, believes in certain things, and then look at the way he lives. We observe him. And everybody goes, yeah? Can you see that? And people go, ooh, Jesus, yeah, that is mental, that's mental disorder. That is not stable, that is not regular, that is, what if they observe that description fits everybody? Would that portend the end? Or might it be an admirable reflection, a laudable report on the growth and health of man? You hear any of that? We're out of time. But the very thing that individually, at a local level now, individually, this great gulf between what a man believes and the way he acts is just a ready-made, an off-the-rack description of mental disorder. But they're awfully close to making this statement that, hey, wait, that is the norm. And my question was, if that happened, is it then like, oh my God, it's correct. It is the norm. That is, we're all done for. The end is near. Is that what it would be? Because at three-dimensional first blush, you go, yeah. But what if it's otherwise? What if it is actually a report that, by God, everything's all right? That's why you might not ever hear it.